We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. I love this quote from Atomic Habits by James Clear. After all, systems are the backbone of so many successful businesses. It is what keeps things consistent. But the surprising thing that I learned in the first years of building my agency is that obsessing about systems actually slowed my growth massively. And the only reason I now have achieved the freedom to work from wherever I want, whenever I want, and make more money than I could ever dream of a few years ago is by totally ditching systems for a while. Instead, I actually had to learn to tolerate chaos, and when I did, my business grew a lot more faster and I started earning a lot more money. So let me explain, because this is actually quite hard to admit. About 5 years ago, before I had started my agency, I was helping my mom grow her e-commerce business. And it was the early days of her business, and saying it was chaotic would be an understatement. Because of this, I ended up really wanting to eliminate inefficiencies, avoid manual work, and create smooth operations. And so I naturally got obsessed with systems. Automations, outsourcing, SOPs, you name it. I wanted all of those things. And I genuinely felt that this was the answer to scale my mom's business. Now looking back, I was very wrong. I don't think being attracted to systems is bad. I still think it's one of the best ways to actually scale a business. And not only that, but also create a business that isn't a headache to run, where you can actually enjoy the day-to-day operations. But the thing is, I had the right idea at the wrong growth stage. And I even remember my mom telling me this very clearly. She's been a career woman for many years, and she is one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. And as we're in the midst of growing her business, I remember she told me, "Ole, don't be afraid of inefficient and manual labor. Sometimes you just have to get things done regardless, even if it feels really inefficient." And she is a woman that can absolutely thrive in chaos. She can get things done regardless. And as beneficial as that trait sometimes is, I also saw the negative aspects of taking that approach, such as stress, burnout, and spending a lot of time and energy on inefficient work. And because of that, I chose to not change my mind at the time. So when I went on to start my own business about 2 years later, chaos became my Achilles heel. It would paralyze me, and it made me procrastinate so very often. Eventually, it led me to waste hours building out useless systems. SOPs, Zapier automations, reporting tools, CRM systems, project management systems, you name it, I wanted to build all of those things. And it was a complete waste of time considering the growth stage I was in with my business. And you can kind of think of it like a car manufacturer building out a system for assembling a car, but that car is only being used to create 2 or 3 different cars. It has a lot of upfront costs, but unless you actually get to use the systems a lot, it's not going to give you a fair return on that upfront effort, time, money, and energy. And in my case, looking back when I started my agency, I know I could get a much better return on my time, energy, and effort if I spent it just selling more, operating to keep my clients for longer, and marketing my business more. So to give you an actual slightly embarrassing example, I remember one time I built out a CRM system in Google Sheets, and I spent like 2 weeks building it out. I hired someone from Upwork to help me with all the functionality to make the follow-up systems and everything as seamless as possible. And it had so much functionality, but it actually ended up being totally useless. I think I used it for just a few days or a week until I realized that this is actually a headache to use. And it's not really necessary at this stage of my business, because at the time, I only got like 1 or 2 clients maximum per month. So nothing wrong with the system, but it was totally useless at that growth stage. Now, humans are different, and I don't think everyone has the same inclination to systems as I did. But if you are a systems person like me, you'll be far more likely to fall into the systems trap like I did. Now, the thing is, studies have actually proven that humans find symmetrical and things that are in order more soothing, because they represent stability and predictability. And on the other hand, you have chaos. Chaos triggers the stress response. The human brain doesn't like unpredictability, because in evolutionary terms, that could mean danger. Imagine you're walking through a forest you've never been before, and you hear new sounds and you see new things, and everything is uncertain. That will trigger the survival mode, and you will become hyper aware and stressed. But this response is developed to stay alive. Of course, there's no real danger to starting an online business, even if it means onboarding a new client that has a setup that you've never seen before. But the uncertainty will still trigger that same stress response as it would in evolutionary terms 1,000 years ago when you're walking through a forest. So when you feel that stress, if you're like me, you're going to try to avoid it. And in my case, it led me to waste countless hours on building out systems that just wasn't required at the time. Now, the answer to avoid the systems trap is one that I actually still struggle with today. And what I found is that the solution isn't tolerating chaos or building systems. As with so many things in life, it's being able to balance both at the same time. In the early stages as a solopreneur, you really just need to get things done, even if it feels inefficient, and you also see that an obvious system could be applied. You very often just need to accept it, really. But the thing that almost no one will tell you is that while operating in this mess, you also need to be aware of your inefficiencies. And that is what makes this so hard. Because if you didn't see a task as inefficient, you wouldn't consider building a system for it. So getting it done inefficiently wouldn't feel that hard. But if you love systems and efficiency like me, you'll actually find it really difficult to get a task done when you know that there's a more efficient way you could have done this. So in the early stages, ignorance to systems can actually be very helpful. But ignorance to systems will also hinder your growth. You cannot just wake up in the morning and tick off a to-do list. That might make you feel productive and you might feel like you're working hard. But what I wish someone had just drilled into my brain earlier on is that feeling productive and actually being productive are often two very different experiences. So let me actually say that again, because if there's one thing you take out of this video today, I think it could be this. Feeling productive and actually being productive are oftentimes two very different experiences. Now for me, this was a really hard pill to swallow. And it is actually the other trap that you need to avoid. On the one hand, you have the systems trap, but on the other side of that, you have the false productivity trap. As you start to embrace the chaos in your business, this becomes your new danger. And if you fall into this trap, it will likely also stagnate and it will hinder your growth. And I can tell you that because that's exactly what happened to me. So let me give you an example. My other YouTube channel, as you can see here, became one of the biggest assets for my agency. I would post Facebook ad strategy videos and it would give me inbound leads that turned into clients. And so I would spend a lot of time in Premiere Pro editing my own videos, and it took a lot of time and work. And when I completed a video, I could tick it off my to-do list. And that made me feel very accomplished and productive. But that is the danger, because the leverage for me wasn't editing the video. It was the actual value that I shared in that video that ended up giving me views that turned into actual paying clients. So in my case, spending 3 hours editing a video made me feel very productive. But the result of that effort is way less compared to what I get now with my content flywheel system. A system that I built out so that all I need to do is script, film, and upload a video to Google Drive, and then my video editor edits the video, creates a thumbnail, and my VA uses the transcript from that video to create a LinkedIn post, newsletter, podcast, and a blog post. So I no longer need to do these things myself to feel productive, but because I have a system, I'm actually way more productive. After I built out my content flywheel system, I was left with a lot more time, energy, and focus to create high quality videos for my agency. And this is what the actual real productivity for me is. Because the difference between a good and a great video is so massive. And for me, the relationship between the input and the output for tasks such as creating YouTube videos isn't linear. It is exponential. So by a slight increase in the time and effort I spend on the scripting, I don't just double my output, I can actually multiply it multiple times to get a much better return on my time, energy, and effort. So let me actually show an example of what I mean here. In this video here, I spent 5 times as much time and effort on the ideation and scripting, and it ended up giving me 13,000 views and over 6 paying clients. Now, 13,000 views might not seem like a lot for you, but within the niche of Facebook ad strategy videos, it's actually quite a lot, and it turned into over 6 paying clients for my agency. So it had a massive return on my time, energy, and effort. While for this other video here, I spent about half the time and it only got me 340 views. And as far as I know, 0 new clients. But the thing is, at the day of posting both of these videos, I felt equally productive because for both days I could tick off my to-do list and say I created a YouTube video. But obviously one of them had an exponentially much higher return on my effort than the other one. So let this stick with you. The feeling of being productive is very often totally irrelevant to the results that you'll get. And if you fall into the false productivity trap and you just stay in chaos and you never build systems, you'll likely stagnate your growth and you'll also probably burn out. But if you build the wrong systems too early, you'll likely also stagnate, maybe even decline, and also burn out at the end of the day. To give you an analogy that I really like for this, building a business in the early days is kind of like sailing a sinking ship in a storm. There's holes in the boat, but you have no idea where the holes are located. And you don't really have time to look around and even search for the holes, because if you do, you'll likely take in too much water and sink before you find the source. So while you're navigating the storm, you need to pump out water manually so that you get out enough water and the holes will start to reveal themselves. And when they do, that's when you start plugging the biggest ones first. Because if you start plugging the smaller ones, in other words, if you start building the wrong systems, it's still not going to slow down your water intake enough and you'll still end up sinking. So similar to starting a business, if you stop selling and operating too early to build useless systems, you'll stagnate, decline, and maybe even go out of business. So first, you need to get things done regardless, even if it's inefficient, so that you start to reveal the big bottlenecks in your business, and that is where you build your first systems. And now you also only have so much time to build out the systems, because if you stop selling, operating, and marketing, the system is not going to help you because you're going to go out of business or stagnate too much. Let's get a little bit more practical. The next question you will have is then, how do you balance between tolerating chaos and actually building out systems? So when you're below about 10K per month in profit, for me, these are the 3 biggest lessons that helped me solve this problem. Number 1 is letting your business live in your brain first. In the beginning, you are the system, and you're still not at the stage where it makes sense for you to hire for your business. So the way I like to think of it is, if you've seen Magnus Carlsen, one of the best chess players in the world, there's this one video on YouTube where he's playing multiple different games at once, all in his head. And to do this, he needs to track every move, stay on top of everything that's going on with all of the 10 different games he's playing. To do that, he obviously needs to be very, very focused and keep everything in his head. And similarly, in the early stages of a business, you are the only chess player, but you're playing multiple chess games at once. So the only way you can do that and make the best possible moves is by staying on top of everything and staying focused. And the best way to do that is by eliminating as many things as possible from your life that takes mental bandwidth. That often means unmade decisions, drama and unstable relationships, constant travel and distractions, financial stress, and a lot more stuff like this. You need to simplify your life as much as possible. For me, this means staying in the same location for longer periods of time. It means limiting unnecessary inputs, consuming unnecessary Netflix shows, drama, stuff that I don't really need that's not supporting my goals, and instead actually optimizing my life for more boredom. And for me, this was an absolute game changer in being able to actually scale to more than 10K per month in revenue for my agency. When I scaled to 10K, I had almost every project, every client, every person in my CRM in my head as well. I stayed on top of almost everything I had going on, and I only had a few systems like a to-do list in my Notion and a few other project management tools that I was kind of using, but I still also had everything in my head, I would say, more or less. And this was the only way for me to really scale to more than 10K per month. The systems weren't the best, and it was chaotic for sure, but it actually worked. Now, number 2 is really important, and that is letting systems develop naturally. As you stay on top of everything, you'll start to recognize patterns, and you will start to recognize where it makes sense for you to now build out systems. And that is when you start applying automation, delegation, and outsourcing to slowly but surely create more efficient and better workflows. Then, as you scale and you make more money, you will have more resources to create more complex systems that will help you even further. But in the beginning, you should just start with the lowest hanging fruit, the systems that doesn't really take that much time for you to develop, and the systems that are the most relevant for you at that growth stage. So again, as an example, for me, I recognized that my YouTube channel was the biggest leverage point I had in my agency. So that's where I spent, a few weeks hiring and building out systems to create that process more efficiently so that I can put out more value and more videos and attract more clients with minimal input. So the key here is, don't force systems too early. Let them develop naturally and let your actual needs at your current growth stage dictate where you're going to build out systems. And lesson number 3 is mapping out future systems and hires in advance. At some point, if you want to scale, you will need systems and a team, but you want to make sure you build out the team and the systems that align with where you want to go. So what have helped me a lot in terms of building clarity around this is very easy. All you do is go into Miro and map out an organizational chart. There you can put in your ideal team structure, how you want your business to look. And as an example, you can see a little bit of what I've put here for my org chart at the moment. Then you can decide what you want to outsource, what you never really want to do yourself, what you want to make someone else in your team do, because ideally you would want to have a business that you enjoy running, and that often means actually not doing the things that you do not enjoy. Then you can start to estimate the cost and what margins you need to operate with to be able to outsource these things. And then you can plan your hiring roadmap. So who do you hire first? Which roles do you fill first? How much do they cost? How much do you need to charge per client to actually fulfill that role? And how many clients do you want to have? Because this is really important. If you don't want to end up with a business that you hate, make sure you map and plan out what your business looks like. So for me, as an example, I want to make around 50K per month in revenue. That's my first goal that I'm trying to reach. And I want to have a lean team. So around 70% margins, that's what I want to operate with. I don't want anything more than 10 clients because I don't want a business that's a headache to run. I kind of want to stay on top of everything that's going on in the business, even when I start to have team members. So for me, that means 10 clients maximum. Then all admin, appointment setting, following up the CRM, and also ad management is something that I want to outsource. And I want to focus on only creating YouTube videos to attract clients, stay on top of the high level strategy that we implement for the clients, and help out with some client communication here and there. That is my ideal setup, and that's what I'm working towards. Now, actually mapping this out creates a lot of clarity, and it's also kind of fun because now you can actually see what your ideal business looks like. And of course, it might not look exactly like this. Maybe you're not going to be able to charge the prices that you would have to do to be able to operate with this margin and have this few amount of clients while making this amount of money, but you can now have something to work towards and you can change it as you go. And I found that this gives me a lot of clarity, so I highly recommend doing this yourself as well, and put this roadmap on your wallpaper or somewhere and work towards that, and always remind yourself what you're working towards. Because if this is the business you want to run, then you need to charge these prices, you need to be able to operate with these margins, and you need to hire in this order in order to get to that level. So in the beginning stages, when you're below around 10K per month, the biggest advantage you have is speed and adaptability. Your business can quickly change and you can adapt really quickly to your client or customer needs and how the markets develop. So over systemizing too early will definitely kill this, because it will slow you down for a bit and it will then take away the one advantage that you have, which you shouldn't do. So in the early stages, instead of actually building out every system, just map it out, then let the systems naturally develop and let real experience dictate where you build your first systems. So hopefully now, by sharing all of this with you, you have a much better understanding than I did early on in terms of how to think about systems building, and also mentally being prepared to tolerate some chaos, because for me, that held me back quite a lot. And hopefully with this mindset, you can just tolerate the chaos, but also be aware of your inefficiencies, map out what systems you're going to create and what hires you're going to do, so that you're actually building towards something, a business that you enjoy running. Because at the end of the day, at least for me, business isn't just about making a lot of money. It's about creating a life that you actually want to live. Honestly, for me, that means being able to travel, see the world, surf the best waves in the world, hang out with my friends and family, and spend time in nature. And that takes me to the last point in this video, which is my call to action. That is the community that I'm currently building, a Lifestyle Designers Club, which is going to be both the online but also in-person community of entrepreneurs that want to build profitable businesses and live life to the fullest at the same time. Because one of the biggest shifts that I had in my entrepreneurial journey was actually starting to surround myself with like-minded entrepreneurs who aren't just chasing money, but actually want to create a positive impact in the world, live life to the fullest, and experience the full freedom that an online business can give you. So if this resonates with you right now, I'm looking for the first 10 founding members. So click the link below, because in September of this year, I'll be sending out some more information on the first Live and Build event. So if you want to be a part of that, it's going to be for 1 week in September. It's probably going to be run at one of the cheapest prices we will ever do. If you're interested, make sure you apply right now. So thank you so much for watching, and please leave a comment down below. Is this something that you are struggling with or you are dealing with right now? I would love to hear your experience being able to balance building systems but also tolerating chaos. For me, it was a big one. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you want to support this channel. And thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.